Bright QT. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. So let's start our next topic, that is religion and anti-colonialism of chapter number 2, that is nationalism in Indochina. Now before this students, we were talking about the colonial education. Now in this part, we understood how education played a very important role in making the students and the teachers and the people living in those native areas self-aware about the colonial government that was established there, right? So it was through education also that an anti-colonial feeling was spread among the native people, right? We saw through a lot of examples. Now here students, in this part, we are going to understand how religion played a major role in spreading this feeling of anti-colonialism, right? So here let us try to understand that. So religion also created conflict between colonial rulers and nationalists in Vietnam. Yes, quite important. Now, do you remember that we had already learnt about the religion that was being followed in these regions? So here we see that when we are talking about Vietnam region, so people here, they followed Buddhism, right? And if I talk about which Buddhism, so we see that they are following this Mahayana Buddhism. Now, we are talking about the native people. Native people here are following Buddhism and Confucianism. Now here Buddhism, you are already aware about it. But Confucianism, what does that mean? This is a new term for you. So students, now this was sometimes regarded as a philosophy and sometimes it was regarded as a religion. But who started this religion or the philosophy? Who introduced this? So it was this man here, a great Chinese thinker or philosopher whose name was Confucius. Now Confucius, he introduced this philosophy of Confucianism, and sometimes it is also regarded as a religion, and that is being followed by the people who live in China, right? Especially in China and some other parts as well. So here in Vietnam, we see that people are anyways influenced by the Chinese culture, right? So here they are following Buddhism as well as the idea of Confucianism. So basically, what is this Confucianism? So like I said, it is a philosophy, therefore it deals with how to live our life. So basically emphasizing on the ways of living our life, right? So it is basically talking about the moral values, the loyalty, the obedience, and how people should inculcate all these good qualities in their life. So Confucius, who was a Chinese thinker, he preached about good conduct, as in he tried to spread or he talked about good conduct, proper social behavior, respect for elders. Yes, students. Now, these were some of the moral values that were taught in Confucianism. Also, Confucius, what did he say? He said that any ruler should be like a father and he should treat his subjects like his son, right? So, what is the relationship between a father and the son? This relationship should be between the ruler and his subjects. So these were some of the ideas that were talked about in this philosophy. Now, we talked about the Vietnamese people. Let us talk about the religion that was being propagated by the French people. So the French missionaries, they introduced Christianity and preached against some of the practices followed by Vietnamese. Now students, do you remember the first or the introduction part that we read, as in how the French, they established their domination in this region? It was through the Jesuit mission. that was started by the Portuguese, right? So here what we see that the French missionaries, these people or religious community, they basically what did they do here? They started introducing Christianity here, right? That was the religion followed by the French people. And they preached against some of the ideas. Whatever ideas were being followed by the Vietnamese that were again denied or they were seen as inferior by the whom? French missionaries, right? So they wanted to, and one of the things that they wanted to correct about the Vietnamese culture or belief was their supernatural beliefs. Now students, you have heard about the term supernatural. Now supernatural, it includes the forces that is beyond any scientific explanation, right? So you must have heard about the ghost stories. In fact, in your own region, you can ask your elders that there are so many supernatural beliefs that we tend to believe in our society. So the Vietnamese people here, they were also believing in these supernatural phenomena or supernatural events. So the French people, they wanted to correct this belief, right? They were totally against this belief. And also because of it, what happened? In the year 1868, scholars revolt, it started against the spread of Christianity. So what are we seeing here? We see that there was the scholars revolt that started spreading. All these scholars, why are giving the name scholars? So basically it was started by these thinkers and these scholars who saw that the French people, they are trying to spread Christianity. The scholars revolt was initiated by the officials of royal court, right? So as the name suggests, that is scholars revolt, right? The term scholars here. Over 1,000 Catholics were killed. Now we see that this was a revolt against Christianity, right? The rise of Christianity in Vietnam and the other regions. So it was against the Christianity and therefore thousands and thousands of Catholics were killed. Catholic missionaries, they converted around 3 lakh people. Yes students, what are we seeing here? That around 3 lakh people were now converted into Christians, right? So here we see that the Catholics, they saw themselves as the follower of Jesus and also they wanted to spread this whole religion, the whole idea that they were preaching, right? And that is how they justified their religion, they justified their thoughts. And also here we see that as the revolt was growing on, the French government, they crushed the revolt. They totally crushed the whole revolt here, right? Now let us talk about one important movement when we are talking about the religion and rise of anti-colonialism. So here students, why are we talking about anti-colonialism? What do you think about it? So we see that when we are talking about be it education, be it religion, there was this anti-colonial sentiments that were arising, right? So it was against the French colonial government. What does this anti-colonialism mean? So any ideas, any protests that took place against the French colonial government, right? So here we are seeing that in education also, now students and teachers were protesting. So likewise in religion also, what are we seeing here? We are seeing that people are now protesting, and several movements were taking place. So one popular movement here is the Hoa How movement. Quite peculiar name here, right students? So let us see what was this movement all about. So the movement began in 1939 in Mekong Delta region. And again, the Mekong Delta region we already have talked about, right? So this is the Mekong river that is flowing through this Indochina region. And the founder of this movement was Kyun Fu So. Now again, this is a peculiar name to remember. But when we are talking about the Southeast Asian countries or the history of there, so here we see that the names are quite difficult to remember. So you can remember the name like this, Yoon Fu So, right? You can revise it by recalling it again and again. Now why I am telling you this? Because this is an important question that can be asked in exam. So this is the image of Yoon Fu So. Now who was he? He helped the poor, performed miracles, preached against gambling, drinking, opium smoking and sale of child brides. Yes. So here we see that he is doing something for a good cause, right? And this was the movement started by him, the Ho How movement. So here we see that he is doing generous things for the people living in those regions. So he is helping the poor. He is also known for performing miracles, performing magics, right? So that was not known to people. And also he preached against gambling, drinking, opium smoking, that was quite famous in China. And also there was a great war that took place on this opium. When you will learn about your own history, that is the Indian history, when we will learn about the struggle movement, we will see that how on this opium the war took place, right? So the triangular trade was there. So apart from that, there was the sale of child brides. So all those small little girls who were sold, right? So he was against all this evils that were taking place in the society. Here we see that the French government, again as usual, they were trying to suppress the movement and Fu was declared as mad. Now what these colonial government people were doing here? They were trying to suppress all the movements that were taking place in these regions. And also, they thought of declaring Fu So as mad. Why? Because he was helping the poor and also he was known for performing miracles, right? Something that was beyond any human experience, right? And also, as a result of it, he was sent to mental asylum, right? A place that was for the people who were mentally disturbed, right? So he was sent to this asylum. The doctor in the asylum became Fu So's follower. Now what are we seeing here? We are seeing that people were so much inspired by Fu So that they were also becoming his follower, right? He was mobilizing people, right, for his own support as well as to fight against the colonial government. So the doctor who was treating Fu So, he also became the follower of him. And in the year 1941, the French government, they had to release Yoon Fu So and was exiled to Laos. Yes, so here this is the term for you, that is exile. Now what does that mean? That means thrown out of the native country for some bad actions or punitive actions taken against the government, right? So here we see that here Fu So was now seen as a threat. For whom? For the French colonial government. And that is why he was sent to exile, as in he was expelled out of the country. Whose country? His own country there, right? So his followers were also sent to concentration camps. Now this was a place where all those who were seen as the enemies of the French colonial government, they were kept in these small camps known as the concentration camps, right students? So here this was all about this movement. Coming back to our exercise section, so in multiple choice questions, you will find a question that says, Vietnam's religious beliefs were a mixture of, so the first option is local practices, worship of supernatural, Buddhism and Confucianism, Buddhism, Confucianism and local practices with reverence shown to supernatural. Now here what are we seeing? we are seeing some common options, right? So in each part you will see that Buddhism is there, right? Confucianism is also common in these two options. Now supernatural is again common in the third option. So what would be the correct answer here? The correct answer is 4, that is all of the above, because we saw that the Vietnamese, they were practicing or following Buddhism and Confucianism, and also the local practices that was related to supernatural, right? So the French people were totally against this supernatural beliefs, right? So the answer here will be all of the above. In very short answer question, there is a question that says, who was the founder of Hoa How movement? So what are you going to write? You will write the name of Yun Fu So. So this is very short answer question. You can write in one line. Long answer question. Explain the role of religious groups in the development of anti-colonial feelings in Vietnam. Quite easy question. So this is a long answer question, students. So therefore you have to write a detailed answer here. So the first point that you are going to talk about is the religion that was followed by whom? By the Vietnamese, and on the other hand by the French people. Now when we are talking about Vietnamese, what are you going to write? You are going to talk about Buddhism. Then you will write about Confucianism. And then you will write about the supernatural beliefs, right? And here you will talk about Christianity. Then you can talk about how they were against the idea of supernatural beliefs, and also around 3 lakh people were converted into Christians, right? The Christian missionaries had converted around 3 lakh people in Vietnam. And also in the year 1868, we learnt about the Scholars Revolt. So in this question, you have to mention about the Scholars Revolt, right? Because it is talking about the role of religious groups, right? And here we can also talk about the Hoa How movement, right? In this movement, we can talk about the founder, Fu So, and also why was he famous. Then we can also talk about how the French colonial government, they sent him to the mental asylum, and how the doctor became the follower of Fu So, right? And how all these followers of Fu So were sent to the concentration camps. Now this shows how the people, they were getting aware and how they started questioning the colonial government, just like it happened in our country, India, right? So here we see that there is this growth of anti-colonial feelings in Vietnam. So these are some of the points that you have to mention in your question here.